All right, guys. Is everyone here? I want to say welcome to New York City. This is the Jamaica Bay. This is really what drew people here. The fishermen, the people moving over across the Atlantic to New York City were greeted by this place of natural beauty. So Sandy wasn't the first time that there was a storm that saw the water from the ocean meet the bay. And that's a term you really hear a lot of the locals use a lot. In 1893, there was a major hurricane that came through. In 1938, the Great New England Hurricane of 1938. Again, Hurricane Carol in 1954, the same thing, the waters met. Hurricane Donna in 1960 was actually the most recent before Sandy, where the two waters met. And it was interesting because about a year before Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irene threatened the area in 2012. And many of the residents evacuated because they remembered Donna, and they remembered that it was pretty bad during Donna. There was about 3 feet of water that covered the island. But when Hurricane Irene took an abrupt turn to the left and missed New York City and nothing happened, they were reluctant to take the same preventative measures for Sandy, which resulted in most of the people, about 80% of the population, staying on the island and witnessing a unprecedented 10 to 12 foot storm surge, which left in this area about 40 to 50 people dead, almost all of them in their houses while it was happening. So let's move on a little bit. I mean, from a meteorological perspective, we modeled really well what the storm was going to do. We had the storm track down for days out, but it just blew our mind that people didn't take note. There was definitely a sense in this community when I talked to people afterwards, they didn't really trust. I don't want to say everybody, but some of the people here, they didn't really trust the information coming from the city. I mean, this area doesn't really associate with New York City as much as you would think. It comes down to this issue of like resolution and like warnings, producing warnings at a very like higher spatial resolution and almost like on a block to block scale. And is that possible to say your block is going to have a storm surge of 8 feet, your block is going to have 7 feet? Like, but do we even need that? Is that really the way that we need to go? Are we getting ourselves in more trouble by now producing these very high resolution warnings and maybe they don't pan out, so now the next time they don't believe them anyways? It's a tough issue. Yeah. We made it. So I wanted to start on the bay and walk towards the beach so you really get a sense of the width of the island. It's pretty short. Yeah. So with hurricanes, even though Sandy wasn't technically a hurricane, which I could talk about later if you guys want, there's 3 main hazards to the public. One of them is heavy rain, extremely heavy rain, creating flooding, rainfall flooding. The other one is wind, extremely strong wind, as we know. And the other one is storm surge. And by far, storm surge is the most deadly and the most devastating and causes the most property damage. So basically what happens is a storm will approach 100 kilometers off to that direction there. The water gets churned up from the system, from the winds. Also because of the reduced pressure, that also causes the water level to rise because there's less air pressure. So the combination of that, the rise of the water and the push of the ocean causes this water right here to creep up the beach and then kind of lap up against this dune here. And once it reaches this top, the storm is usually in its heightened state and the sea is still rising, and it creates a very fast, rapid movement of water over the dune straight across to the Jamaica Bay. It just goes to show that sometimes it's difficult to, I guess, convey the hazards of a particular event. And meteorologists following the storm really knew that this wasn't going to be a wind event. We knew that the main hazard was going to be the storm surge. And I guess that goes to show in like the damage. That's really what happened, more or less.